This September, the EWG Scarlet Knights Alumni Association invites you to join us to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the founding of Exeter West Greenwich High School. In this video series, we'll chat with longtime faculty and staff to remember some stories you know, and maybe a few you haven't heard.
I was hired in May of 1990, and I actually started working in May of 1990 while I was still working at Bayview. So it was really an interesting few months because Mary Christian and I were hired at the same time. And we were meeting with Superintendent Walt Gibson and Mr. Dizaki and trying to get ideas together for curriculum, looking at the curriculum, how is it actually matching up with what the state required. So I worked from May all the way through the summer, getting ready for the school to open up. And it was difficult because this was an active construction zone. And the only thing that was even close to being finished by the summer was the junior high. And we were not in the high school. I didn't get my classroom in the high school until January. So, and we kind of snuck in. My classroom, which was 216, had been the office for the construction company. Gilbane was using it. And finally they left. And I had my own key, which I knew I wasn't supposed to have, but I did have my own key. We snuck over, through the bottom and went up to 216. I opened up 217. I took out all of the stuff that belonged in my classroom, and we straightened out the whole room, and then I called the office and said, "I've moved." And they said, "What?" I said, "Well, my classroom's all set up." "Well, how did it get set up?" "I don't know, it's all set up." The kids just looked at it and they sat down and went, there's room. We can move. We have windows. We can actually see. There's so much history here, and it's so hard for people to imagine what it was like coming in here. I mean, we were holding our first interviews over at Lynham. We used an old construction trailer sometimes for our last meetings that had become like the superintendent's office here on site. There was so much dust, so much dirt. But we were all having a ball. We've always had issues with the roof from day one, unfortunately, and with some of the windows. And I know they took out a bunch of windows, recaulked them, and then the next day we had a rainstorm, and the rain was right back in again. So there are certain things that have just been design issues. It's a beautiful looking school. We used to call it Condo in the Woods. I can't tell you how many times I went by it trying to find it the first time because I had no idea that this was a school. And when we didn't have a principal, okay, Mr. Clayman's back in the job, and that happened a few times. That's why the banner that's in the library, that banner with the sonnet, that was actually a presentation from VVA chapter 273 to the class of 93 on class day. It's one of Shakespeare's sonnets, and it's just talking about, how you would always remember your old friends. Midnight Madness, I didn't get to go to too many of them, and all I do remember of that was just the craziness that was in the school. It was really great because we were building community, and there were a lot of activities during the day that led up to that. I didn't do an overnight, but I know those people who did. It was quite an experience, especially getting up the next morning and trying to do breakfast for everybody. It was shocking to me, who had just come from a school where the kids were affluent enough where I was taking them to Europe every year. And then I come into a classroom where I've had kids who have never even been to Providence. And that was like, oh my goodness, we've got a lot to learn here. The teachers had a lot to learn. I know I relied so much on Mr. Anderson and Mrs. Conroy to just, tell me what's going on. Let me know how to reach these kids, because this is a different base than what I've had before. And it was the time we went into Desert Storm. And that was an incredible teaching experience. But I had the whole Desert Storm on transparencies, because that's how I started each history class. The kids were so interested, and I think there was just a level of nervousness too. And I remember we did a big fundraiser. Mr. Benz was there. We did 40 boxes of stuff for the troops. And then the kids started getting letters. And one of the soldiers actually sent me a Tabasco bottle full of sand from Kuwait. But that was in my desk those whole 24 years. So many fun things that we could do, like building that dragon. I don't know if anybody has a picture of that dragon, But oh my gosh, watching that dragon go up. And it was an interesting piece when we used to have graduations out there. It just kind of disappeared over one summer. We were creating something from scratch. You know, I mean, gosh, when we came in May, like, what books are we going to buy? It's like, nobody's made a decision on books yet. Okay. And outfitting labs and, you know, I mean, and those were top priority items. So sometimes when it came to other departments and books, you know, you had to really fight for what you got. I mean, it was nice to be in a brand new school. But it was just the excitement of, you know, that we were all pulling together to create something and everybody had ownership of it. I think that was just the most incredible feeling I've ever had. Yep. It's amazing to think of how many years the school's already been here. It's that the staff really stuck together. And I think that was the most important thing. You had department chairs that worked together as a really good team and had a lot of mutual respect for one another. And we all knew that we were focused on the kids. And I think that made it an incredibly strong school at the beginning. And there were an awful lot of jokes that happened when spaghetti was served the same day at the lunchroom, kind of wondering where it came from. But just to see the creativity in that. And I think that was one of the things that was so important is the projects had so much creativity and bringing in URI and watching them use that pressure gauge to see how much the bridges could take before they would actually fall apart. That was just really, you know, marvelous. Some kids did such a fantastic job. Other kids just kind of like put it together and were surprised at how much it actually held. Some of them broke pretty quickly. But again, it was something that, you know, just really was great for the whole school. And here I think our goal was really to set a community, to establish a community, to establish a high school culture that was uniquely Exeter West Greenwich. And I think we really managed to do that. Those first formative years were just so important.